clambered in with his 2 satchels in tow. He had his equipment, compass, Jeppesen flying charts, radio, and, of course, his smartphone. The other bag contained his food provisions, which included a bottle of French Burgundy wine, a wine glass, corkscrew, bottle of water, another flask of hot coffee, some French cheese, half a baguette, and his favorite chocolate. The professor would need the coffee to keep him warm, as the air temperature falls around 3 degrees Fahrenheit for every 1,000 feet rise on a clear day. With a quick glance at the fuel gauges and a look all round, he was ready to be set adrift. Pulling the still warm globe from his pocket, he noticed a red beam emitting from a point. The professor and the balloon soared into the afternoon sky in the direction of the red beam. For those on the ground, a very strange thing happened. As it reached about 2,000 feet, it simply vanished. The professor had no idea. He thought he was traveling as normal. There was a strange swirling mist around him, obscuring his view. He looked below, expecting to see the small English village, with its cricket green, pub, and windmill. The Bastille. Instead, below him was a large, old city. There were no cars or wide roads, no skyscrapers to be seen. The buildings all looked old-fashioned, built of stone or brick, and all in a similar style. A thick yellowish smoke hung over the buildings. One particular building stood out, a much taller stone-built castle-like building. It looked like a fortress. Fumbling for his phone, he quickly took a picture. What was that familiar building? He just could not remember. Down below, everyone was either walking, traveling in horse-drawn carriages, or carts, or riding horses. This was most peculiar to the professor until he looked at his globe, which, still glowing, was now shining with a short green beam. Quickly, the professor looked for his Charles Dickens book, A Tale of Two Cities. Finding it, he looked at the cover picture, and there it was. It was the Bastille. He was looking at the Bastille. Somehow, he was hovering over Paris in 1789. Quickly checking his fuel supply, he realized he might have a couple of hours' worth of flying time left. Not wanting to land on his own, he hunted for what would be a present-day map. If he landed now, he may not be able to take off again. Fortunately, he always carried an up-to-date, local Jeppesen chart with his flying equipment. Finding the chart with Meofam on it, he picked up the globe and pointed the beam to Meofam. The globe's green light immediately started changing to blue as he shone it over the position of Meofam Green. The globe's light then changed to red as it traveled over Meofam Green's position. He quickly replaced the globe back in his pocket. With a long blast of heat from the burners, the balloon started to rise up into the sky. In a very short time, the balloon had risen to over 3,500 feet. This was way too high for safety in the skies over southern England. That's if he was still in England. So the professor opened the side vanes, descending through the haze to around 1,500 feet. Looking around, he saw the familiar sights of the Kent countryside, when suddenly his radio crackled into life. He heard Simon's voice fading in. Golf Bravo Zulu Tango Alpha, do you copy? Excited and relieved, he responded, "This is Golf Bravo Zulu Tango Alpha." Then he gave his coordinates, adding, "I am descending into an open field by our large barn. We have you in sight now. You disappeared for a moment. Something most interesting just happened." I will explain when I land. The balloon took a few more minutes to land. Well, crash land, as all landings are actually controlled crashes in the field by the barn. Simon arrived with the Land Rover, pulling the balloon's covered trailer. Tony wasn't far behind in the trusty Volvo. The professor was excited to talk about his flying adventure, but decided first to clean up and repack the balloon, gondola, burners, and tanks into the trailer. It seemed to take forever to fold the balloon envelope, bag it, then place everything in the trailer ready for the next flight. The propane cylinders were stored last, so they could be easily refilled. Back home again. Professor Watson wanted to walk to the manor house to gather his thoughts, so he had Simon drive the Land Rover and trailer into the barn. He lived just outside the village in a sprawling mini country estate set in 50 acres of mixed woodland and pasture. The 6-bedroom Georgian manor house, he had named Mandalay, was beautifully laid out with ornate flower beds, a formal garden, potager, a stable block with a small paddock for his 3 horses, and a walled garden that had been converted into a swimming pool. Neighbors were always speculating where all his undoubted wealth had come from, rather enjoying the air of mystery he knew surrounded him. The professor wasn't about to tell them. Simon parked the Land Rover and walked back across the cobbled stable yard to the main house. Tony left the Volvo in the courtyard. Simon asked in an endearing way, "Tony, what do you think the old man saw?" It must have been unusual. He was quite excited. They knocked on the door, walking into the main house's kitchen. There, poring over his maps and reference books with dictionaries nearby, sat the professor. He was definitely excited about something. The professor glanced up, mumbling, "Help yourselves to coffee." Before resuming his search of the latest book he had in front of him, Tony went to a cupboard, taking out 2 mugs, while Simon picked up the coffee jug from the coffee machine. They both joined the professor at the kitchen table. Simon was first to say, "So what's up, Professor?" The professor stopped what he was doing, turned and quietly said, "I've just traveled through time." Hey friends! If you love our adventures, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a new video. See you next time.